And what I really like about your approach is that you let facts kind of drive the narrative, and you're using Google Images, and it's really interesting, and I think people should check it out.
I hope people buying the book will appreciate the level of research that I've been going through these years. It's something that took most of my private time for these last years, especially in the evenings, nights, in which out of passion I really delved into US-Mexico history and culture, and was a great journey for me.
Welcome to the show, Nicola.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'm so excited to have you on today. I've been hearing a lot about you from Steve. You two have been working on a project together, and he's been really excited about it. So I'm excited to have a conversation with you today. But you guys have been diving into the subject of the Texas-Mexico border, but I am really excited to kind of discuss that topic. But before we do that, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicola Moscelli. I am a photographer, a documentarist, and also an electronic engineer working at the European Patent Office. So I work as a patent examiner in applied physics. Nothing to do with photography, but photography is a big passion of mine. And it's something I'm carrying on in parallel to the daily job activities. I am really interested in documentary photography, and I have started doing photography actually quite pretty late, because I got my first camera when I was just graduated from engineering school. And I pretty much didn't like it because there was a lot of automation. There was a digital reflex camera, and that didn't allow me to. There were so many automations that I could not get the photos I wanted to get. So I then went on a journey of analog photography, where I really learned, let's say, the basics. By just self-taught, just like that. And
that's really interesting. That's really cool, but we'll dive into that. But you were interested in science and technology, but you got an engineering degree, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, talk to me about that.
I'm an electronic engineer.
Engineer.
And there's actually an aspect to photography that it's pretty much technological. That is also part of the quest for me. In that I am a very technical person, and photography. I guess all kinds of arts have a technical aspect that everybody has to master, and that's the beauty of it. And then when you master the technique, you're able to express yourself fully, and in a way, it gives you full freedom and potential. I guess photography is the kind of art that matches this kind of background I have. Plus, of course, also the fact that it allows me to express myself without using words. I never felt myself as a skilled writer or so, even though, in case of need, I do. But I still think of myself more of a visual kind of artist. For expressing myself.
That is really interesting. I think the art and science blend a lot is really interesting. A few years ago, I saw a photographer taking these microscopic images of these chips and blowing them up full size and they were in like this high contrast look, but they were stunning. I want to say they're beautiful, but I hate using that word beautiful. But there is this really interesting blend between art and science. So you're doing electronic engineering. So what kind of electronic engineering are you doing?
So my background is on sensors. I've been working on sensors for basically all my career. When I was at university, I made a diploma thesis on an optoelectronic sensor. Then I started working in Vienna at university in research field on sensors applied to biological cells, microfluidic devices. That was super interesting, and was a great experience in which I had to work in collaboration with biologists, biotechnologists, and physicians. It was really a nice time of my life. Then eventually I moved to Germany, where I started working on algorithms and functionalities for the emergency brake assistance in vehicles. So with radar, lidar, these kind of sensors that are positioned in front of the vehicle, and they can allow some more advanced features such as ACC, emergency brake, and all these kind of functionalities that can make your drive way more secure than it used to be. So that was also a super nice time. It's a super interesting field, and very, very, very advanced, combining different sensors, signals, and building up functionalities that were unthinkable, like 20 years ago or so. And then eventually I started my career at the European Patent Office, where now I sit on the other side. Let's say I'm not creative anymore with my job, but I judge creativity of somebody else in a way, because I get patents and I need to read them, and patent applications, and eventually grant them. So it's super interesting. You get to read a lot of nice inventions, things that you were not thinking they could exist, while they do. So it's a very nice job. I like it a lot, and that also it's a job in which you can.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
That connection between engineering, but I think engineering is like the application of science, and engineers get a chance to really kind of like take that theory and apply it. And I love that aspect of engineering. Do you find that your creativity there is actually translating to your photography practice? Is that why you kind of get into it?
So I think that there's a part of me that, of course, wants to keep creating. Okay, and photography gives me the possibility to do that. I see that if I look back at when I started with photography, there was already a part of me that wanted to go in that direction. But I'm not a kind of photographer that wants to hide the fact that he's an engineer or something. I think everybody needs to take money for a living, and I don't see myself as earning money from photography in that I would not be able to work for clients. I would not be able to work for on weddings or such events, even though I took photos at weddings of friends. I've been asked several times. I've done it with pleasure. But those are not the things that make me engaged to photography. I don't want that. So if I do photography, it has to be for what I have in mind, and that's it. So that's nice, this dichotomy that I have in my brain, sort of like engineer by day, photographer by night. in a way. Uh,
I love the creativity part of that. I think that is really, really interesting. I like how it's translating and speaking into your work and blending together. And that project, that dead end project, speaks to your research and the depth of research that you get into, and it's really, really interesting. And we're going to get a chance to look at that a little bit later. But you said you were self-taught. Do you follow any particular photographers? Anybody out there that inspires you?
Well, there are quite some photographers that I like and that inspired me a lot. If I have to name a few, but also a view of the Dead End project, that is what, maybe we're going to talk later. But there are visual artists like Mischka Henner, for instance, and also Michael Wolf. I don't know if you know them. Michael Wolf was this German photographer living in China. Was one of the few of the first artists using Google Street View for his projects, and he did it systematically for a bunch of different ideas he had. And one very interesting project he did was a series of unfortunate events that you may know. He was taking photos of glitches on Google Street View, and it also won a prize at the WordPress Photo a couple of years back. But he also did other projects, funny projects, like I think there was another one on the Eiffel Tower. So he would take screenshots on Google Street View of anywhere in Paris where the Eiffel Tower was visible, even to, spiking to buildings, or even to reflections, and other sort of stuff
in the windows.
It was super funny.
The obsession! Yes, I love it. Yeah, I love it.
There's another visual artist that I really like. His name is Mischka Henner. He's Belgian, I believe, and he made a super interesting project called No Man's Land, and it's basically environmental portraiture of sex workers in Southern Europe through Google Street View. So I found it super original and interesting because it's not about the voyeuristic, look at sex workers, but it's more about their condition. It's about the way they live, I found it brilliant. You don't even see the photos are really low resolution, of course, because it's a Google Street View technology of 10 years ago or so, and the faces are even blurred. Yet it's a super powerful work, I believe. And it's nice when there are photographers or artists that somehow transform a medium that you have had in front of you all over, and yet they give it another meaning. They select part of it to give it another meaning and to let you think. I think I found it really inspiring, and that motivated me also to work on that project, or that particular project. But also, for instance, there's another trio or duo now, I think. It's called VAS Program. It's an Italian group of visual artists that did a super nice booklet. It's a kind of a zine called. It's about a truck driver called Ivan Putnik. It's a guy that doesn't exist. So they collected basically screenshots of people uploading 360 views of Russian landscape, and they've made this diary of this truck driver, that fictitious truck driver, traveling throughout Russia. And next to the photos that are in some cases also scenic, some others are hilarious, they also write notes about what this truck driver has to do or what he needs to buy, what happened on that day. It's super nice. I found it fascinating as well. It's nice when you can somehow put together, visual. Something visual that tells you something with some text, some poetry, even that can really give another meaning to the whole thing. So basically it.
I think those are great examples, and they really tie into what it is that you're doing. There are some people that call it photography 2.0 or photography 3.0, but they're talking about this advent of cameraless photography. And that Google car has basically gone out and mapped the world with images. And you, in a lot of ways, you're kind of diving in to that archive. But we also do that as well, as photographers. We map our world with a camera, and we're doing it, of course, a little bit more pointed, but you're doing a really interesting job of diving into that photography 2.0 world and still applying your perspective. And I think that's really, really interesting. But you're also a street photographer. What photographers do you look at?
Well, there's Alex Webb is for sure one of the best street photographers out there. I like the way he creates layers, of different people doing different kind of stuff. I find these photos really storytelling. There's a bunch of photographers I follow also on Instagram. But I must say that I changed my style in time because I started street photography with a 50mm lens, and eventually I ended up with 35-28mm. So I like to take photos of people even nearby in some cases. So let's say I was very concerned about framing and creating a nice, appealing aesthetic picture at the beginning. But eventually I discovered that it's really hard to create that kind of aesthetics in a street, because there's a lot of things happening and there's always some little detail that you cannot control and gets in the camera, and there it is. That ruins the balance of the aesthetics. But then I also thought, well, why? I mean, we're so over-flooded by aesthetic photos that they become even forgettable. You forget about them as soon as you watch them. And what if I concentrate myself on storytelling? What if I try to find to take photos that are not perhaps 100% beautiful? They don't really reach the beauty standards that Instagram and other platforms kind of set to us, or like these stock photo portals where everything has to be perfect. And what if you just catch the moment, just like that, in a serendipity kind of way? You just happen to see something, you take a photo. It's not perfect, but by all means, it works. So even if it's blurry, even if it's out of focus, even if anything, just as an example, and I think, this photo over here, this was taken with a phone even. So it's all blurry and everything, but it still tells a story to me. And I found that super interesting. So that's the kind of quest I'm trying to develop with my street photography right now.
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. When I look at your work and I kind of see your background in developing images and being a photographer yourself. Were you always a creative person? Were you creative as a kid?
I was.
Tell me about that.
So I was. I remember I was drawing a lot. I was obsessed with drawing, also technical drawings, everything that needed precision stuff, and also I played a lot with Lego. That was my
That's cool.
creative
I did too.
moment. I would invent out of the few bricks I had, I was inventing just anything, and stories along.
Well, that's what I'm getting to here. You're kind of a creative kid and you're building things, and I'm trying to make that connection to that connection to photography. When did it start to click for you? When did you realize that you were a photographer? And I know you're self-taught, but when did it click for you?
Well, so if there's something that I always had in my mind, that's something I'm actually happy to have, is the confidence. So it's like, oh, nice, this guy did it. It's a super nice photo. Maybe I could do it as well. Maybe I could, learn myself also this kind of technique and try to see what I could do with it. And so I was never, overwhelmed by learning. It's actually something I pretty much like. The day I will stop learning, I will feel bored. So it's something that it's part of the process. As like also now when I want to be, because also being the creativity needs to be nourished, meaning that you need to read, you need to document yourself, you need to see what other people do, but also read, watch movies, documentaries, stuff that has nothing to do with photography that maybe one day will click with something you have in mind. I have this, and I think that this perspective of being positive about a challenge and say, okay, why not? Let's try. And then if it's crap, okay, it doesn't work. But then I know, I don't put myself a limit. I just like to experiment, and that's with that mindset that I started my experience with analog photography, which I found super interesting because every mistake you do is there for you to see. You cannot just act as if it didn't exist. You don't take a good photo on a digital camera, you delete it. These photos, they don't get the dignity of getting printed to go out in the sun, to be shown to people. Whereas in the past, we were developing a film and everything was out there. Every photo had the dignity of being printed, being shown. At least a couple of times.
You get to live with your failures,
Exactly. And when you learn, you learn pretty quickly. And when you have 36 frames, or even with medium format photography, you have 10 frames to take, then you make them being worthwhile. So you really do the effort of staging everything, of putting all the parameters together to get the picture you want. That's actually what helped me a lot. Now, eventually, I started shooting more on digital, not for anything, because I have less time to develop, scan, and all that kind of activities. But more importantly, I think it's the approach. So when you have the same approach you have learned on analog photography, on digital photography, then everything just works. You take that picture you really wanted to take, and that's it. You don't take 10, You take maybe 2 or 3 and you go on, and you know you have a good one among these 3. So that's the advantage there from having this background in analog photography.
That's awesome. I'm curious now I'm curious now about your photographic journey, and I'm more curious now about what pulls your eye, what pulls your attention, what projects are you inspired to do? This might be a great setup to where we're about to go, but talk to me a little bit about what pulls your attention and what kind of ideas are you exploring?
So that's a very interesting question, because I feel that there's a shift between between what I started doing at the beginning and what I'm interested in doing now. And the shift pretty much corresponds with the beginning of this last project, long-term project, Dead End. Even though photographically speaking, I have lots of different interests, I now tend to see myself as more interested in documentary projects that have to do with history. So I like to scan at a territory, at a subject, or a place that for me is meaningful in a way, and intersect this place with stories about its identity, things that come from the past and kind of resonate also with what you see on a daily basis. So I really like to mix the cards there, shuffle them by putting a short circuit between what is the present and what was the past. I find myself very much interested in that, and Dead End is the first project that really goes into that direction. But I also wrote about 2 other projects that also follow this direction, and I look forward to start once I will find some time later on this year. I believe that it's not about being a photographer, a good documentary photographer. What means for me is not having a style and being, following that style forever and ever, and crystallize yourself to it because it works. For me, the style of the photography has to match what you want to say. It's like when you want to talk to somebody, you look for the register that fits, that matches what you want to say. If I want to tell a joke to a friend, I will use dialect because it's going to be more colorful and it's going to make you laugh more. But that's a style. If I want to say something about something else, maybe that's not the best style, and I have to think of how to take photos or how to work in a way that matches what I want to say. And I find this quest super interesting because it makes me continue this on this iterative learning path in which I observe what other people do and what I can take, what would work, what doesn't, and keeps me experimenting in a way. But yeah, as I was saying before, for me, what I would like to be remembered for, let's say, eventually, is for this perspective about identity and territory and story. So take these 3 concepts together and put them visually together in a way that can tell a story about the present and the past and why they are connected together.
You definitely did that with the last project you did, and I can't wait to jump into that. But I think it's great to probably go ahead and jump in to some of the images. Do you want to start with your previous work?
Sure. Let's do that.
Okay, perfect. I know that last project, the latest one, is just front of mind right now. And I know you're in editing mode, so I know it's probably you're chomping at the bit to jump into that. But let's jump into that early work and kind of see where you came from.
Maybe let's go through very quickly through Umerki, which
Perfect.
is the first series, just because we spoke about that.
Great.
And then very quickly through the other ones. I'm going to share the screen now. So Umerki, as I was mentioning before, was the first documentary series I was working on from this trip I did in Iceland. And you can see the human element in the Icelandic nature on and on throughout the series.
What was it about that, your eye is going directly here? Were you just not interested in how beautiful Iceland was? What were you seeing here?
Well, maybe I'm a bit harsh there, but beautiful. The nature can be beautiful, the landscapes can be impressive, and so on. But when you're taking a trip and you're going to be there on that very moment, and that's it, you cannot spend a week on that place to take the perfect photo with the perfect weather conditions, the perfect sunlight, and so on and so on. Of course, these pictures are going to look nice, and they're documenting the fact that you're there in that precise moment, but they're not be as compelling as photos taken by any other kind of photographer that has scanned Iceland over and over again.
Sure.
So for me, even though I took also, of course, photos of the nature around, I was actually more drawn by these little elements in the environment that were capturing my attention. Like, look at this beautiful hot shower in the middle of nowhere. I find it super fascinating to find something like that. I saw that I was driving by car. I had to stop in the middle of the road to take a photo of that, because it's really it was telling me a story about something totally unpredictably happening in a place where you would not think to find something like this.
No. I'm thinking to myself, where's the shower curtain? Where's the privacy? I guess Iceland is that isolated that you have no one around you, and you can basically take a shower.
Oh yes, that's for sure.
It makes you think a lot that it's like,
absolutely,
even though you have that kind of spread out, isolated space, you still have no one around, but you still have this one element that shows humans are there. You know what I mean? This particular thing.
Yes.
But I'm sure as an engineer, you were also going, how did they get that out here?
That's probably also part of the equation. You're right, Patrick.
How'd you get that out here? That's genius. Yeah, I bet.
There is another series I've been working on since quite a while, and it needs to be reorganized because eventually it exploded with photo content, and I need to give it the right direction. But it's basically a series that is about my origins. I mean, I've been living abroad for a long time, since after my studies. Now when I go back to south of Italy, I look at places that in the past were familiar to me, and even forgettable, I would say, because they were just always there. They were my background of the first part of my life. They started to tell me something. They started to speak to me in ways I didn't think of, because living abroad and for most of the year and being back to my place means that I can see can look at my place with different eyes, and it's a completely different perspective. It's something that I'm still trying to analyze and grasp, but nevertheless, in an impetus of creativity, I just take photos. I take photos because these places they speak to me. It's all about probably memories I have from the past, but also about this environment that is peculiar in a way, because there's some decay. There are some also buildings that are abandoned, unfinished, but you also see the effects of nature on them. The fact that they are corroded, or that the walls, they're washed, the paint is washed, and so on. This photo, for instance, was taken in Sicily, in a port where you see these boats. They are probably from Libya, and they were probably immigrants were traveling on them, and they were then, they were sort of put away from police, in order for them not to be used again.
It's good composition.
So this is all in medium format. That's what it's on film.
So this is where you're from? Where you were born?
No, not exactly. These are all places in south of Italy. A Mezzogiorno, in fact, and thanks for introducing me to this topic. A Mezzogiorno means Mezzogiorno is south, like south of Italy, but Mezzogiorno means also at noon. So it has this double meaning. Noon is also, when the sun is high, and most of the times the shadows are the harshest, even though not in all pictures you see that. I find beautiful also this kind of contrast between sacred and secular. Only south of Italy you can find like a little kind of an altar to Jesus, to the Holy Mary in the middle of the street at a street corner. That's something beautiful.
And then a contemporary building built behind it. Yeah, it's what I found in this series is, number one, the absence of people. You seem to be capturing some of these times during daylight, but it also feels kind of empty and withering away. I thought this series was really interesting, but I was going to ask you a little question. But when you think about Italy, and these are the images that are coming back, what do you feel like you're bringing back?
Well, there's there's a lot of mixed feelings about Italy, because it's not the place that gave me the possibility to work and to be who I am now. So I had to leave it also because I was looking for better jobs and opportunities. So at the beginning, I was also always puzzled about what is home, When you're living so much abroad, you also want to put roots in it because you want to feel home. So for a period of time, I was not going back to south of Italy. I was not going back much. My parents would visit me, but I was trying not to go in order to feel at home where I was living. But eventually that didn't work out in the sense that I have made peace with myself that, for some time I'm best off in the Netherlands, and for some time I'm better off in Italy. So I feel like a migrating bird, so it needs to have both.
Going south in the winter.
Yeah, sort of. I wish I could do it more often, but with little kids, that doesn't work right now. However, this is a series where I was starting to reasoning about all these things, and this is my mother's place, the place where she was born, and where I spend most of summer times. And it's a place that gets depleted of young people every year because they go for better options in north of Italy. And many towns in Italy, like even the town I am from, Bari, which is a relatively big town of over 300,000 inhabitants. The young people, they after university, they leave, or they leave already to study at university somewhere else. And so,
Are you thinking about that a lot? How are these places going to keep going, When you... You watch it wither away, and this is one of the things I've noticed. These artists that are doing the post-industrial age, and all this turn-of-the-century stuff and all these ideas of the future that are just forgotten, and it's Europe and World War II, right after World War II, and all these big grand visions of the future that are just not being realized anymore. And a lot of these towns are starting to kind of lose all their young people, and I think a lot of people are kind of reflecting on that through photography, and I had this one artist that was looking at the Rust Belt in the United States, but you're also kind of going through the same thing in Italy. Does that make you question a little bit about the future and the future of this place? What are you thinking about, and what are you noticing?
So I want to look at it with optimism, but I must say that when I took this picture you have in front right now, it was a kind of a protest picture, a picture I wanted to take to show that this town is kind of dead. It's dead to me. There's no perspective, and that's exactly the reason why I took this photo in the local cemetery. But it's true that even my mom says, this town hasn't changed. This called Lizzano. This town, this town hasn't changed in 50 years. It's always the same and repeating. But there's also a trend now that I see it's changing. Maybe because of COVID. Maybe because of the pandemic, I see people being attracted by the possibility to work again in little towns, just because if you are a freelance and anything you do is on a computer, why not living in places where, weather is great, food is great. Actually, life is not bad at all, and life is much cheaper. So I hope for south of Italy that this trend now will start to to get
bounce back or something.
Because
I love that optimism.
Would help a lot. Yeah, I mean,
I like that. We need that. There's a lot of people that are depressed about this kind of stuff right now. Yeah. And it is. When you think about these places, you said you came here when you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, every summertime I was there. I was growing there every summertime. I have friends there. And now about your other question, like why people are not in there. And that's also part of the title of the series, A Mezzogiorno. It's at midday. Everybody is so hot in summertime. You have 30 to 40 degrees. That only a mad, desperate photographer like me would go around with a camera at his neck taking photos. So that's also part of the story.
There's no umbrellas anywhere.
No. Another series I was I've been working on. It's Monogatari. It's a series about Japan, about this dichotomy between multitudes and the crowds, the people that you see in mass everywhere in Japan, and also the solitude, also the individuals you can also see roaming in a almost like if they were completely cut from the rest in the environment they're moving in, and so it combines street photography with panoramic photos. So I went there actually with two cameras, a Leica M analog camera with Kodak Trix film, and an Hasselblad X-Pan that takes these beautiful landscape photos. And I have tried to combine natural elements together with street photos in order to give that kind of feel to the whole series. So you see the multitudes over and over again, but also these multitudes reflected also in what you see in the environment, like this wave of people in the left, reflected also in a real wave in the sea.
I love the comparisons, seeing those side by side.
Yeah,
I definitely see the patterns together.
Yeah, I went by association. Gotcha. It was a very playful time I spent combining these photos, and eventually I also combined photos I took with my phone, because why not? Sometimes, you happen to have that in your hands, and you take some nice shots.
So, in this, when you think back through this series, what stands out to you the most?
Sorry, I lost you for a moment.
What stands out to you the most in this series?
Well, I really enjoyed putting together two completely different elements. That was the tricky part when I had this project in mind, and I was like, let's see if it will work out with the content I will take, throughout the trip. it was for me also interesting to work really in combining the pictures and to find a leitmotiv that would link them all, as if I had in my mind at the beginning of the trip. It speaks for the beauty of Japan, of course, but it also speaks for a connection again to nature. When you see pictures like that, that tells a lot about Japan, because also they don't build for some religious regions. They don't reasons. They don't build beyond a given altitude. So you can of course you can find shrines and temples and so on, but then they keep nature as wild as it can be. And so you have this beautiful contrast between very high-tech towns with skyscrapers and with millions of inhabitants, with a lot of lights, LED lights, and where you're really drawn by your attention like at 360 degrees, with places like those that are where you don't hear a thing, that are really wild, and where the nature is untouched. So I pretty like the fact that I managed to combine these two components together. That speaks a bit
talking about two sides of a pendulum, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you did a nice job of kind of tying these visual elements together. And I loved seeing that ocean next to the people shot. I thought that was wonderful. But if you live in the city and you look out a window like that, it definitely looks
yes,
ways.
Absolutely.
It's so strange.
It is
kind of surreal.
And also, so like in the way I had this theory in mind, it would be a circular tale. So eventually, this last photo would rejoin with the first one. Now
Gotcha.
On the website, this is not possible, but this is how I envisage the series.
It kind of speaks to your visual language and your origins, and I like seeing that exploration with your camera, and the things you think about are definitely things I think about a lot, and I love how you kind of take a step back, and you're very present, and it's showing up in your images. So I think it's really interesting how you shift it, you know, and you shifted into that project Dead End. So let's talk about Dead End for a little bit. And this is the latest body of work that you have, and
yes.
I know you've been spending a lot of time on it, and I've been hearing a lot about it from Steve. So he's the producer of this show, but he's been working with you on developing a book, and now it's getting out there. It's going to be ready, and I got to see some of the early drafts, and I was really excited about talking to you about it today. So I'm actually glad I get a chance to talk to you a little bit about it today, and listen to your mindset on it, and what you were thinking about on this project. So.
Yes, well, it's been a long journey. This is my first long-term project, and I am really grateful to Steve. I've learned a lot through this time, because I don't have, as I mentioned before, I don't have a photography education, and having a project with him in which he would follow me regularly, that really taught me a lot about how to make a visual project from A to Z. And I got to know Steve, it was in 2020, We have even met in person in Utrecht. He was coming for a collaboration he has with Photodoc. We liked each other pretty much. At that time, I had worked on a series of Google Street View screenshots about borders, like borders from all over the world. And I had collected some 250 images by just taking the yellow man, the Pegman, I think he's called, and putting at the border between countries, because it was a time in which I was really curious about, like, hey, what happens if I take it and see what's in there? Like, the border took my attention because it's in a way it's like a geometric singularity. It's called in mathematics, right? It's a place that doesn't belong to either A or B, yet it's there, and it divides two entities, two countries with different traditions, maybe different languages, histories, and so on and so on. And so, I was curious about that, and I was collecting all these screenshots because I was, really doing that by night, basically. Then we discussed with Steve about this series, and in the end, the idea that grew was to make a series that would rather focus on one border in particular, in order to make a research work that allows for a more meaningful documentary, visual documentary, in which I could also, explore the history between the two lands, Mexico and US, and also about the identity of these lands, and also about the culture of the transborder culture and the Chicano culture as well. Also, the Google car moved along the border for different times, and there were lots of points of interest that really allowed me to explore in depth what was happening there. The title of the work itself, Dead End, plays a bit with this double meaning, right? Dead End meaning like all these streets and roads that end on the border fence and cannot continue. But also, the meaning of, desperate situation, a situation of that has no possibility to improve. So, in a way, it's a title that matches what you see.
I'm kind of curious, what drew you to that particular border? It's a massive issue right now in the U.S.
I know, it's massive.
In that particular border,
so
is
yes, and I had also the honor of having a personal interview with the Mexican ambassador in the Netherlands a couple of months ago, showing the project, and she was really happy to see the project, but she also told me that the situation now is really dire, and there's lots of tensions. Plus, of course, both countries have elections this
is
year,
a big issue.
Meaning that
it's like the number one issue in the United States right now. What's interesting to me about what drew you there is but it's always in the news, and I know it's international. So
yes, so
talk to me about that.
But also, so yes, I mean, I've been in the U.S. A couple of times. I've been in the U.S. in New York on the East Coast, but also on the West Coast. I have been also in Florida. I don't know exactly the border, but I was in the U.S. in November 2016, host by a friend in in Los Angeles, in Venice Beach, when Trump got elected. And it was a moment in my life that I will never forget, because both my friends were crying non-stop. They just couldn't stop crying. They happened to be a lesbian couple, and for them that was a total disaster, as you can imagine. And it was a moment also in which there was a lot of talks in the news about what Trump was telling about Mexicans and immigrants, and Mexicans in particular, that they would that he would build a wall and Mexico would pay for it, you know. So it was huge. There was a lot of rhetoric going on. And of course, it's not the only border having issues. We have our big share of issues also in Europe, in Italy, in Spain, in Greece, at the border with Turkey, in Hungary, in all these countries. And also, of course, also in the middle of the Mediterranean. But in a way, the US-Mexico border is the archetype of all these borders, because it went through it all. If you think about it, it's a border that went through a war in order to be set. So even the beginning of the border, where there was also the Gadsden Purchase later on. The border was set because the two countries were at war. And the border is also the cause of the birth of twin towns, because the border is actually in an area, a desertic area, where there's nothing else around. So there had to be towns that needed to managing the border and for regulating the exchanges along the border. So there are people living along the border that probably don't feel either Mexicans or Americans, but they feel more as belonging to this area, transborder area, in which you can switch on your TV, even if you're in the US, and watch the news in Mexican from a TV channel from the other side of the border. Same for the music, same for the radio, same for whichever thing that you see around you. And besides, even on the US side of the border, all these states that border with Mexico, they have a huge percentage of Latinos living, which is slowly overtaking the number of whites, or let's say Americans of European descent. So yes, I think it's nice because it's a border that encloses a lot of different levels of interpretation. There's the identity side, there's the historical side, the wars, and anything, the battles that happened, the tensions between the frictions between the two countries, but also the cultural aspect, and of course also the tragedies. But when you look at those pictures and read through websites, books, documentaries, everything starts to merge on its own. It's like it's a one unique story that somehow is created by the visual content, but also by the people who experience the border or study the border or have an impact on the border itself, the politicians, governments, and so on.
Yeah.
So I believe a strength of this project is the fact that even though I wrote a lot of texts on my own, explaining situations that happened in certain areas that evoked me to some of the stories I write. All the texts I wrote found a different section in the book. And I decided to create this dialogue between the visual content that you see and quotes of people, as I was mentioning before, that were impacted by the border, studied the border, lived there, historical characters that have a say that combines pretty much with what you see. That's, I think...
Take us through some of the images.
Yes, sure. I think...
And then tell us some of those stories and take us into that world
sure.
a little bit.
So, this first picture already says it all, right? You read a portion of text written on the border fence, and it's already, quite a strong slogan saying we are neither villains nor illegals, we are international workers. That says it all, I guess. But of course, I was also trying to do some to create some thoughtful view on the issues of the border. This is a line of chemical toilets in a parking in a natural park in Texas that matches pretty well with what Donald Trump said that I mentioned before. But also, you see also situations in which I managed to take environmental portraits of people. The human presence is not everywhere, but when it's there, it's really striking. Like in this situation, for instance, I used this photo, this street photo, to talk about the separation of families that was done during Trump's administration for a while. But yeah, they say the work doesn't stop to Google Street View content. There's also prints and postcards that allowed myself to go into the history of discrimination and also the battles, the wars that took places along the border. Here you can also see people being likely apprehended in Mexico alongside the border. This is just one block from the border, and everything is happening there. There's of course also a lot of exploitation at the border, also sexual workers, and it's there to see. It's literally there. The beauty of Google Street View, of what Google created, is that it created a map, a visual map of the world, where it doesn't matter really about the aesthetics, but it really it's like a surveillance camera in a way. So it has frozen a moment of crystallized a moment of life as it is, I also pretty much like this postcard of Geronimo, because when I saw that also in many books about the US-Mexico border, that the Indian Americans are also part of the equation, but not many people talk about them. And the quote I use associated with these postcards is very striking, because it tells the first time Geronimo saw the white men, and they were there taking measurements on the ground to divide the ground, and they were not soldiers, and they familiarized with them. They were friendly, yet they were there to divide their territory, to use it, possess it, and to throw them to some other place, to a reserve. This town also in Arizona called Sells is called like the capital of the Tohono O'odham tribe. And by just looking at the U.S. Census data, you get an understanding of the conditions in which they live, compared to the figures in the rest of Arizona. That's pretty striking. Also, what drawn my attention was the names that were given to the streets that are ending on the fence, on the border fence, because Mexicans, like in Europe, they like to give names of people to the streets, and in some situations, these people have something to do in a way with the border, or part of the history of Mexico and U.S. So I found, for instance, this poem by Javier Villarrutia pretty much matching with the visual content. Here, there's also a graduation at a school in the U.S., very close to the border. The border, you see it in the back, far away. You see a very faint line. That's where the border fence is. And some of the students is not happy about the Google car and raises the middle finger. Also, there are also choices, policies of U.S. government that made an impact also on immigration since the beginning. And this is one of them from August 1917. These are the regulations, really the very words that were used to indicate a new policy for the medical inspection of immigrants. So it's always nice to put everything in perspective and reason about the situation now and how did we get there. And actually, you see that this situation roots to 100 years ago. In some cases.
Yeah.
This is also a powerful photo of a shop of religious items that faces the border fence. And so you see the border fence that is reflected, in the windows of the shop and the Google car itself. But what's more important, you see in the middle the Holy Death, Santa Muerte, which is a divinity that has been created not even long time ago. It's a pretty recent, and it's a divinity that has let's say resembles a lot the Holy Mary. But you see a skeleton wearing her dresses, and this is a divinity that is reached by prayers for different kind of reasons. Now, the prayer I've put together with this photo is I think it's striking because it could be, the Ave Maria or Holy Mary prayer. If you put the words in there, it would be almost one-to-one. So it's really sort of a religious appropriation of a saint to create something completely different, with the difference that the Holy Death, he's prayed, invoked also for seeking justice, for repairing a debt. It's also used by the narcos for their own missions and aims. So there's a book by an American researcher that really collects all these prayers, and I found it really fascinating. It's really an anthropological study of on its own, I would say. There are also photos that speak on their own. Sorry, you were mentioning something.
I was going to ask you, as you went through this project and you're finding these interesting moments, was there anything that stood out to you that kind of you thought you knew before, but it kind of changed your mind in this whole process? Was there anything in here that kind of changed your mind about the whole situation?
No, I would say no, in that I started this project with a very humble approach, in the sense of, okay, I know nothing, and I really need to study here because I'm an Italian photographer sitting in the Netherlands, willing to talk about a border I've never seen, so I better study, I better document myself, I better am sure about what I want to say and how I want to say it. So I really embraced everything I was reading and studying, without preconcepts, without actually having a preformed mind on these issues. But what I was really trying to do throughout the project is to try to have point of view that reflects the fact that I am European, that I don't know anything about it. So trying to be distant, not only physically, but also in the way I approach the stories, trying to be as objective as possible, comparing, different sources, making sure that this is really a valid assumption, or, making it such that it's a watertight story that tries to put everything in perspective.
I think it's interesting that, you are taking this outside perspective and you're using a really interesting approach by diving into Google Maps and using that like resource to explore a border that is kind of not really, something that you're an expert in, but you're interested in, and Google Maps is giving you that opportunity to do that. And, as an American, I know this, and especially as a Texan, this topic is very close to us. And, but what an interesting opportunity to dive into it through Google Maps. Was there anything that you learned about it? Maybe that kind of a lesson that you learned, something unique, something that you learned?
So it's a very complex question, and I thank you for this, because it allows me to give a bit more perspective also to my view of borders, not just the US-Mexico border, but borders in general. First of all, about the US-Mexico border, what I learned is that, you have basically there's much more to the news, to what you see, that is hidden. There's so much, even though there's a border wall, there's a border fence. There are so many interactions between these two countries at cultural level, and so on. Also, manpower, you can name it. There are several levels of interactions, but it all boils down to an issue that has several levels of interpretation, and it's really like a spaghetti plate in which you cannot just take out that spaghetti. It's all in there. It's all mixed together, and it's really difficult to take the issues one by one and tackle them. But what I do see is that there's a lot of influence of the U.S. Also in Mexican politics, in choices, in events that happened in Mexico, that if you read it on the news about the narcos doing this or doing that, you don't. It's all about narcos in Mexico. But then when you start to deepen your knowledge, you see that actually it's all intertwined. And there are choices in the US that reflect the way narcos behave, police in Mexico behaves, and so on and so on. So it's a very delicate topic.
I think you just expressed that really well. It's not as clear cut as it seems.
No, not at all.
And I think that's where Trump got in trouble before.
Yeah.
He
and now,
it's pretty wild.
But just to complete just to complete my thought, it's I feel like there's much more to it than what you see, in the sense that as much as Trump can discuss, criticize, and the issues at the border, U.S. needs Mexico and Mexico needs the U.S. I mean, you see that they are pretty much dependent one another, even though there are all these issues in place. But now, from the perspective of an amateur historian, if I step back and I look at border issues, there's a beautiful book. I will just talk 2 minutes about it, but it's a very fascinating book. It's from Eric Klein. He's an historian that made a book about the end of the Bronze Age. Okay, so we're talking about thousands and thousands of years ago, and it talks about the end of the Bronze Age, a time in which all around the Mediterranean there's no evidence of human artifacts whatsoever for 400 years. So there was a down of this Bronze Age that has been studied all over, in Greece, in Turkey, in Italy, in Egypt, north of Africa, and now this historian is starting to put everything, all the pieces of the puzzle together, especially because of the advances of technology that allow also the study of sediments of ground to really look into what was really happening in there. And what you will see is a lot of violence in all the towns that at the time of the collapse of Bronze Age. But these signs of violence are not signs of violence related to people rebelling, wars between neighboring countries, but about poor people rebelling against power. They were probably desperate, dying of hunger, and rebelling against the authorities. This you see it in the excavations all around the Mediterranean. And recent studies have shown that what happened there was a microclimate change of a few Celsius degrees that created huge troubles for that kind of rudimental agricultures they had. And the only civilization that standed throughout this time were the Egyptians that were living from the floodings of the Nile River. And now, with that in mind, when you look at the hieroglyphs in ancient Egypt, and you see at the wars they had against the Hittites and other civilizations, you see that there are not only the soldiers depicted there, but there are also old people, women, children. That means that masses of people, already thousands and thousands of years ago, were pushing at the doors of Egypt to enter because they were hungry, they were desperate, they wanted to access food, to get a living. And the Egyptians fought at their borders and killed them. Now, humanity has forgotten that. Now, thousands and thousands of years later, we have forgotten about that. Nobody speaks about that. But we are now, again, in a climate change, in a situation where there are wars between countries. And, the situation is very dire, very critical in some areas, more than in other areas. But we are there again, yet again. And if you think about that...
So you're seeing a connection between those two things and in this idea of a crumbling border, and you're using that kind of as an impetus for this project. That perspective.
Yeah, I find a striking resemblance between these two stories, and since we as humans never learn from history,
I think we do.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Hopefully we do.
I think we do. I'm an optimist.
That should give a bit more perspective about the situation we're living now. But also about who we are. I mean, I had a DNA test, right? It was just for fun. My wife bought it for me and I had it. And guess what? It resulted that part of me is from Middle East, another part of me is from locals, some other part of me is from ancient Greece, and also from some Jewish ancestors, some people also from the Normans, from north of France. That tells who Italians are, who Southern Italians or Italians in general are today. And borders have changed a lot. We as Italians exist since only 150 years or more. And we're not united together for a long time as since the Romans. So that tells already, by looking back at history, that the situation is always fluid. What does it mean to be Italian? What will mean in the future to be Italian? Will it mean the same as today? Of course, situation changes, and we need to be very honest with ourselves that we cannot crystallize things as they are. But there's also a lot to be said about colonization times and how we exploited these other countries, and now they are in the situations they have, and we act as it's not part of our problem. It actually is. Looking things like from actual facts of nowadays, with the lens of an historian, through the books you have read, to what happened in the past, that gives another kind of perspective that is like, okay, wait one moment, what is the big deal here about trying to solve these issues also by helping these countries actually intervening in giving back a bit of what we took for centuries, right?
I think that is an interesting caveat to a lot of this. I guess what I'm enjoying about what I'm hearing from you is you're taking a holistic approach to this, and you are diving into history, and I really think it's interesting. Is there one particular part or one particular image that really stands out to you while you were making this project?
Well, maybe I can talk a bit about this very picture we have in front. This is in a town called Allende. It's actually 40 kilometers off from the border. And in this town, one day, over 10 years ago, narcos arrived and killed 300 inhabitants. Just like that, in one night. And they massacred inhabitants, taking them from the streets, just because they had surnames they were the same surnames of some whistleblowers that were collaborating with the DEA in the US. So the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, I believe, right? They were conducting a mission in which they were trying to track narcos activity in northern Mexico, and they, after a series of busts of drugs at the border, they convinced the people that were arrested during these busts to collaborate. But at some point in this story, some DEA officials spoke about this new interests from DEA to some Mexican officials, Mexican police officials that were corrupted. So the news went right away to these narcos people that went to this very town and killed everybody having the same surnames, believing that they were familiars or family members or friends in any way associated to them, relatives. And so this is a town that even today shows the signs of what happened. This villa is an abandoned villa, and you can read here in the middle of the photo, Dios siempre nos da la fuerza para el próximo paso. So God always gives us the strength for the next step. And you find these murales in different places of the town as a way probably to, give perspective of what happened, try to, go through it through religion, through beliefs. And you find here also the quote of a retired government worker saying what was happening on that night, all the oddities, one of the oddities that was happening on that night, like there were um, uh, teenagers ordering over 50 hamburgers to go. They were not from the town, but that already made them feel
strange.
that something was odd. It was best to go home and barricade home, Those are places where life and death are really death is pretty much part of life on a daily basis, and that's not something in our societies, democratic societies, we are used to.
No.
That's also the different scale, right?
This is also why so many people that live in those communities are actually concerned about the situation there. But I'm sure there's many other different stories on both sides that
yes, absolutely.
But
if I can close with one anecdote, it's just to show you also how history is actually unpredictable. There's an episode in Ambos Nogales, the twin towns between US and Mexico, that took place in 1918, in which there was no border at all, and that episode gave rise to a battle. All of a sudden, in which U.S. Army entered Mexican soil and killed people. Among them, there was also the mayor of the town itself. And it all happened because of a perfect storm. A Mexican carpenter, returning to Mexico with a huge, cumbersome bag, just trying to cross the border. None of the U.S. border agents stops him until he's already on Mexican soil, right? But one U.S. guard, after seeing the cumbersome package that he's bringing, he tells him to stop. He tells him to freeze and come back because he needed to inspect the package. Now, the Mexican guards shout at him, no, come forward because you're already in Mexico border, in Mexico territory, right? So now, Patrick, put yourself in this carpenter 100 years ago. What would you do? What would you do in such a situation? You would freeze. You would not know what to do, right? They're shouting at you from the US side and from the Mexico side with completely contradicting orders, right? And at some point, the US guard points a rifle at you. You get scared. And all of a sudden, there's a sound of a fire shot that explodes. So again, what would you do in such situation? You hear gunfire, you duck, you fall down. But what the Mexican guards thought there was that this Mexican carpenter got a bullet in his back. And so they fired against the US guards. And that's how the battle started. Just really out of nothing. It was just a perfect storm. So in a nutshell, what I want to say is that in this book, there's a lot of research about nowadays culture and facts about the US-Mexico border, but the historical aspect is also pretty much in it and part of the equation, and really allows the viewer to get a deeper perspective of how we got here, why this is what we see now, 100 years later.
It's fascinating. It really is. You have a mock-up of the book, correct? And so,
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're looking at the website, but let's take a quick look at the mock-up.
Yes.
And we can get a chance to see what that looks like. And so this is kind of a
Yes, we're
primitive.
finally...
Yeah, let's take a look and
Yes.
take me through really quickly, and then we'll wrap up.
So the book will contain two sections, the Mexican side and the US side. And it is in the form of a dossier. So it really looks like a dossier where, you have your tags and you have the information, the data to be inserted. And as I showed on my website, also the evidence, as we call it in the book, the quotes that match what you see at the border. So from the US side, it's pretty much of a virtual tour journey from west to east, and on the contrary, we move from east to west on the US side. And I tried to make a selection of photos that would cover as much as possible all situations that you see along the border. But of course, as you may imagine, it's difficult to condensate 3,500 kilometers of borders, plus 200 years of history in just a few photos, But of course, it's a work of synthesis that it was really difficult, but we were pretty much satisfied with the end result. This is also a nice story. It's about this town called Los Algodones, where there's a dental tourism. So people from US and Canada that do not have the economic means to be treated in their countries, they fly there. And this place is a little town of a couple of thousand inhabitants, and out of them there are something like 500-600 dentists, something huge. But yeah, that's also part of the story, right?
It talks about the dynamics.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
A lot of people just kind of go there for dental care, plastic surgery, all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
There is so many industries that are, I don't want to get you to give the whole book away. I want people to actually go get the book.
Yes.
What do you hope people, when they go through this, take away from it? What are you hoping for this project? I'm kind of curious what you are intending and what you hope from the project.
I hope people buying the book will appreciate the level of research that I've been going through these years. It's something that took most of my private time for these last years, especially in the evenings, nights, in which out of passion I really delved into US-Mexico history and culture. And it was a great journey for me. I really hope I managed through your podcast, through this episode, also to share with you and with the audience my enthusiasm for the topic, but also the passion that I infused in this work.
So I think it came through.
I hope they can go through these images, and even though maybe they won't go through all the essays I wrote, or I don't know, but they just read the evidence, have a look at the photo, and reason about things happening there, and try to understand that border issues are critical for us, but also for the people on the other side. And that's a very strong exercise we need to do is an exercise of empathy. That's never enough empathy.
Sure.
And the fact that there's a border, the border should not stop your vision. Should not stop the way you reason about things, or the way you are interested in things. I'm only interested in what is inbound. No, you should also be interested on what happens on the other side, and question yourself: what can I do best at political level when there's elections? How can I matter to raise my voice and contribute to a change in perspective?
It's really, really interesting, and I really enjoy your outsider's perspective and the research that you did in the topic. In the United States, this is a really polarizing topic, and it just seems like the two sides are really dug in on their perspective as far as what to do with the situation that exists at the border currently. And what I really like about your approach is that you let facts kind of drive the narrative, and you're using Google Images, and it's really interesting, and I think people should check it out. I just have one final question for you, and I know you have made your way as an engineer, and you're expanded your world into your passion for photography and as a maker. And I am curious if you have any advice for anyone out there that want to kind of expand themselves in that way. So do you have any advice for anybody out there?
I think the best advice I can give is to never stop doing what you want to do, what inspires you. And also don't feel, overwhelmed or underwhelmed when things don't turn out necessarily the way you thought they would. Because in the end, art is therapeutical. We do it because we feel we can say something. We can have a say on a subject, and we want to express it in a way that may compel other people or may not. But in the end, you do it for yourself, and that's already a big pride. That takes already a big pride to find the time, put the efforts, and to do it. Then, of course, doing it at a serious level, it's a bunch of different kind of world in which, it's super complicated. There are so many good photographers out there. Oh my goodness. I keep discovering more and more. But that should not stop you from doing what you want to do or saying what you want to say. Because, I think it's also inspiring to see so many other people doing that with different backgrounds, not necessarily artists. You see a bit of everything, and as long as you have fun and you feel good, just go for it. That's the best advice for a starter.
Yeah,
I could give.
I would agree with that. You know what's really funny is that one thing that I've noticed, especially as I've talked to all these artists, and I don't think that I have met any two people that agree on or see the same situation the same way. You get so many different kinds of perspectives, and if you allow yourself to kind of dive into your interest and chase your interest and just be obsessed with something and allow something to ring your bell in a way, and if you stay focused with it, you'll find your way with it. And I really, really, really enjoyed your advice there. So take the time right now to go ahead and share with us how we can connect with you, when that book is going to be coming out. Tell us a little bit about how we can connect with you.
Of course. So my Instagram account is Nicola Moscelli, as easy as that, name and surname all together. Same for the website, nicolamoscelli.com. I am not a social media kind of guy, so I'm not very active. I share things when I have something interesting to share. Otherwise, I don't. And I'm really excited to tell you that, as was mentioned before, the book is now being printed as we talk, 500 copies. I also wanted to share with you the information, the big news that the book will be published by Penisola Edizioni, that is this independent publisher, Italian publisher. But now there's going to be a collaboration also with Antigua Edizioni. It's a bigger publisher that will also help spread news about the book.
It's big news. Congratulations. That's really good.
So we hope by June to start with the shipment of
That's awesome.
For the people who participated in the Indiegogo campaign. And then we'll be in touch. Stay tuned for events in which I may participate to present the book. So more of it later on in June, July, and later than in September.
Well, I think this episode is going to be coming out exactly when that book is coming out. So it's going to be perfect timing. So congratulations.
Great. Thank you
everyone,
so much.
Go check out his website. Go buy the book. This was a wonderful conversation. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you again, Patrick, for hosting me. It was a very fun
It was awesome.
talk.
Thank you. To all those that have made it this far, thank you so much for joining us on the Urbanaut Podcast. If you like content like this, please consider liking, sharing, and commenting down below. That all helps us with this little thing called an algorithm. But it definitely helps support this show if you can do that. But also if you feel compelled to help a little bit more or contribute to us a little bit more, you can become a member on our Patreon page and become a subscriber there. And that'll help support us and bring you more exciting guests like the one you saw today. And if you looking for another way other than Patreon, we also have listener support on Spotify. You can also support us that way as well. And as always, we'll see you next time.